If you're like me, you've been playing Honkai Star Rail these past few weeks and you are completely obsessed with this game. So much so that you even look up videos about this game. I've come across many videos about Honkai Star Rail myself and looked up how to play and build certain characters. That's exactly the reason why I wanted to do this video. To tell you that you shouldn't build or pull for certain characters, just because some people are telling you that these characters are good. Now, let me explain. Right now we are at the second half of patch 1.0, and if we are looking back at the early patches of Genshin Impact, a game developed by the same company, I'm starting to see a pattern. Some of you might have played Genshin in that time, but might not remember how it was back then, and some of you might have started quite a while after launch, or maybe never played it at all. So before I try to explain my point, let's take a look at those good old times together, shall we?
But this puts him in a really weird spot. He can't deal damage properly and he can barely heal. What's left are the pyro attacks you can gain from his elemental burst.
Barbara, aka the most boring unit in the entire game, but you should probably build her because she's really fucking good.
It took me about 5 minutes to realize that Xinyan was going to be one of the strongest supports Genshin Impact has ever seen.
Is she good? She looks shit. I'm confused. Is that good? She's insane? Sick, man. I guess damn.
Chi-Chi is an amazing healer that brings her own firepower into the fight.
Okay, not only did you get 2 5-stars, you got the #1 DPS unit in the entire game, which is Diluc.
Thank you.
And you got the #1 healer in the entire game, which is Chi-Chi. Oh, and by the way, those two also work together on the same team.
Oh, awesome.
So, not only best DPS, best healer, also top
And then we
synergy.
have Superconduct, which based just off of its description sounds to be the strongest one.
I hate Ganyu so much because the problem is that she's so fucking good. She breaks the
problem
fucking
with
game.
Xingqiu is that he tries to do too many things at the same time, making him master of none.
But Superconduct is the king of the game. If you aren't running Superconduct in your team, you are neutering your overall DPS. This is probably one of the most important things to have in the game. It is something that I constantly want to be proccing, and it's seriously like the
We're
meta.
gonna be talking about one of the most underrated DPS characters right now, actually the most underrated, which is Zhongli.
I don't think Xing Kui is bad at any means. I actually think he's quite good, but I do think you just need to build a team around him, and one of those people who need to be in that team is Chongyun.
If you're even a little bit familiar with Genshin's current meta, you know, no one would say this nowadays. No one. The reason why I showed you these clips is not to make fun of those creators or anything like that.
Tastes the same as I remember, but where...
Keep in mind, no one played Genshin as much as content creators. It's literally their job. So those content creators had a good understanding of this game and its mechanics, at least much more than your average Genshin player back then. So, what can we learn from this? I've ranked those clips into 3 categories. So let's talk about these. The first, and to be honest, only mistake on this list was to misvalue certain characters and elements. In the beginning, most people underrated characters like Xingqiu and especially Bennett. Like, seriously. Some people called Bennett the budget version of Diluc. Can you imagine?
Oh, wow. Where did that come from?
But they also overrated other things like superconduct or physical damage in general. The most efficient way to deal damage is by applying certain combinations of elements and triggering elemental damage. Physical damage doesn't matter that much. Even back then, Diluc and Keqing were great damage dealers because they could trigger those reactions easily. The second point is also quite simple. The meta changed. Over time we got more characters and even a whole new element with Dendro. At that, some characters got an indirect buff as we got new best-in-slot weapons or artifact sets. Other characters got less useful over time. Take Venti for example. He is still great at sucking in large group of enemies and a good team member against those enemies. What made Venti weaker was to introduce more big enemies with the release of Inazuma. He can't suck them in with his ultimate and group them up. What about freeze teams? They also got nerfed, because we got more boss enemies in the Spiral Abyss, which can't be frozen. And as someone who played quite a lot of gacha games, let me tell you that Genshin has barely any power creep compared to other gachas, and the meta still changed that much. But don't confuse this point with the last one. You see, even if you would start a new Genshin account, characters like Chi-Chi or Barbara would be a great addition to your team. They may not have that much use in Spiral Abyss compared to other healers, but in the early game, or even in the mid game, they are still really, really good. At the beginning of the game, healers like these two are essential to your survival. But as you progress through the story, get more characters, weapons and good artifacts, their value goes down by a lot. They simply don't give you that much value besides their healing, and because of that get outshined by other healers in the game. So that was quite a lot about Genshin, even though this video was supposed to be about Honkai Star Rail, right? But I needed to talk about this to explain my point. When I look at video titles and thumbnails about Honkai Star Rail and watch guides, it really feels like it was at the beginning of Genshin Impact. Don't get me wrong, it's not like it's something bad, and I don't want to blame content creators for these guides. I know those help many people, myself included. Not everyone can build or pull for every character, so it's great to share our knowledge of the game. But that's also the reason why I wanted to point out why you shouldn't just build every character that someone recommends to you. You might put your limited resources into characters that at the end of the day might or might not be that meta-defining as you were told. Or maybe you want to build a character because you like them, but right now everyone clowns on them. Maybe even rightfully so. But still, right now we are at a point in the game where I don't think we can predict the meta. Keep in mind, even if we already unlocked late game content, we are still just in the early to mid game. The real end game starts as soon as you are able to build a team or two properly with decent artifacts. But until then, be careful with your resources, and the most important part, have fun with the game and just play it how you want to play it. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you for listening to my rambling about mostly Genshin, and I hope I'll see you again in another video. Bye!